And so it talks about the struggles that my family had in the beginning because my mom was only 14 when she met my father, and
How old was your father?
he was 22.
Mm.
I don't know if he knew how young my mother was, but
Mhm.
I don't know how he couldn't because she was really petite. My mom,
Okay.
yeah, she was like 4 feet 11, and even at that time, she probably was maybe 80 some pounds. So she was little.
Mhm.
And my dad, he's 6'3".
Mhm.
Yeah, he's a big,
Mhm.
he's a tall, he was a
Mhm.
tall guy.
Mhm.
And they met at a talent show at East Tech.
Really?
My mom, I don't think should have been there for one, and my dad was already too old to
Yeah,
be
he
at
shouldn't
the
have been there.
school, right?
Really? Right, he shouldn't have been there for sure.
And she's the one who caught his attention, and that's the beginning of the story.
Mhm.
And they had a whirlwind love affair. I don't know if you can say that. But she wound up getting pregnant at 14, and he disappeared because he was into some trouble. He had been robbing some banks,
Mm.
and he had to get ghost as fast as he could. And he wound up getting caught about maybe, I want to say a year and a half later, and he wound up going to prison. So I was about 1.5 years old when he went to prison.
Wow, okay.
He went to prison, federal prison for those bank robberies.
How many banks he robbed?
2. It's kind of funny. I talk about it in the book because my grandmother, she had to fill in a lot of gaps for
Mhm.
me. And then I met him when I was much older, and
Mhm.
he filled in some gaps too. By the time I started to find out a little bit about the story, my mom was already gone. But yeah, and so it was just my mom was somebody who didn't let, as my grandmother say, let the grass grow under her feet. So
Right.
after she was pregnant with me, she met my sister's father.
Okay.
And I thought for most of my life that was my real dad. And because he was there when I was born, made me a part of his family. To
Mhm.
this day, those are my nieces and nephews,
Okay.
uncles, and not nieces and nephews, cousins. His nieces and nephews are my cousins, brothers and sisters, my aunts and uncles, mother and father, my grandparents. I mean, his mother, I only know her as my grandmother.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when did you find out he wasn't your father?
I'll talk about this in the book too, but it was my mom told us. And what happened is that my sister and I ran track for the summer.
Okay.
And we had to get our birth certificates. And we were living with my grandma Lula, his mom at that time. And my grandmother got the birth certificates, but I don't even think she knew what was on our birth certificates. So my sister saw the birth certificates.
Wow.
She saw my mom's name for mom from her, saw daddy's name for her. And then when she saw mine, she only saw my mother's name on mine. And for father, it was blank.
Wow.
And so she was kind of confused.
Mhm.
She was like, hey, how come daddy's name isn't on Michael's? So she went and asked my grandmother, and my grandmother didn't say anything.
Mm.
And at this time, my mom was still alive, and we were still visiting with her off and on. So she asked my mother,
Mhm.
and my mother said, I got something to tell you guys.
That's deep. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna tell you how I could relate to that. I was hell. I think I just found out. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago that somebody said that the guy who I thought was my father wasn't my father.
Wasn't.
Oh yeah. And I'm like 50, like
Wow.
when this dude shows up. And well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna just say we're gonna get back on your thing. When you find out, and I'm gonna keep this 100, when you find out that you may have an estranged relative or something out there, you really hope for the best.
You
right?
do.
You hope that, I hope that motherfucker is Bill Gates.
You know what? When my mom told me, I was thinking, because I figured that there was something different. If you see my sister and I,
Mhm.
you would know that we don't have the same two parents, because my sister is really fair skin. I'm talking about fair skin. She is sometimes almost pale
Mhm.
and has hazel eyes.
Right.
And so I'm quite obviously our complexions are way different. And then my dad, I call him dad because I didn't know what other name to use. We just had different personalities,
Right.
different interests, the whole thing. And it was just always this disconnect between us.
Mhm.
And so when my mom told me, I wasn't too surprised. But then, like you, I'm thinking, who is my dad and where is he?
Right.
I'm thinking one day he's gonna ride up in here in a Cadillac,
Right.
take me out to Pepper Pike,
Right.
to my house,
Exactly.
him and his wife and kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that
Nope.
wasn't the story.
What do you say? I ended up with some old buster, lived over off Cedar. I'm like, Cedar, 101st to see that. And I call him a buster because I'll talk about that one other day. But
Okay.
he wasn't, yeah, he still ain't Jack. Yeah. So back to your story and going back to you about your memory. So I can totally relate when you talk about getting surprised and thinking one thing is something else. But throughout your book and throughout your story, you had plenty of those.
Oh yeah,
Plenty
a
of
lot
those,
of,
you know.
a
So
lot of.
let's talk about this. I want to talk about some of the what you would say was your worst experience as a child growing up. Is something I know you talk in your book and you mention, and as we talk a lot about your mom dying and that kind of thing. And I know that, but let's really give me some of the things that you think that really you can think of that you think was just really bad as when you was growing up. Like,
You know, I talked about my mom's size, and just for clarification purposes, my stepdad, he was, slightly bigger than me, but not as big as my biological father. He was about 6 feet and maybe about 180 pounds, but my mom, real small. And so I have some, vivid memories as a kid of him being just brutal to my mom. And I would see, I would hear first my mom screaming and yelling for help. Sometimes it would awake me at night, and then I would run to where I hear the screams coming from, only to see the man who I thought was my father pick my mom up and slam her on the floor, or slam her up against a wall, or slam her on the bed. And then at times I would see him take his knee and put it into her chest. At times he would stomp her, punch her, slap her, strangle her. And as a kid, I'm thinking that parents are supposed to love each other. They're supposed to protect each other.
and how old were you around
I
that?
was 4, and this happened from the time I was 4 all the way up until I was 11. And the only reason why it stopped when I was 11, because he went to prison.
Wow.
And he went to prison not for beating my mom, but for aggravated burglary.
So he was out stealing too.
Yeah, these 2 role models I'm supposed to have, these father figures, they
Now, what was he doing? Breaking into houses?
He was breaking into houses because of his drug
Oh,
addiction.
so he had a drug problem.
So did my mom.
Okay.
My life was complete chaos. So I was watching that, and then because I was the oldest, I was responsible for trying to, help my mom heal after all of the beating. So I was getting her the face towel to wipe the blood up. I was getting her paper towel or a napkin to wipe the blood, getting her a face towel, put ice in it so she could bring the swelling down. I had to watch the lady who I thought was one of the most beautiful women in the world always have to hide her bruises with makeup or put these sunglasses on because my dad had blackened her eyes. Watching that as a kid, that was horrific. And then the drug abuse.
I was say drug addiction.
Drug.
That's a whole nother monster by
Yeah.
itself. Because once he's gone, then now you think everything out. Now here comes the real demon is the drug addiction.
The drug. But I saw both of them engaging in it while he was there. They would, I'll talk about this in the book in terms of that the smell from them burning the drugs, and then they had the tools up on their dresser. So when I would go in the room to go get the TV, there's the drug paraphernalia.
What was they doing?
Right there?
Smoking or?
Oh no, they were shooting up.
They were shooting up.
They were shooting up.
Wow.
Yeah. And my mom, in addition to the bruises and stuff on her, I saw all the marks on her arms, on her legs. I saw the marks on my stepdad's arms. And it's just, I don't know how a kid or parents can put their kids through that, but that addiction had a tremendous hold on both of them, where that was their complete focus, and a lack of support and awareness of, for me and my sister.
That's is hard, especially IV drug users, man, when they using that and heroin use and that kind of thing is really hard, and it's tough on everything. It's tough to kick it. It's tough for the whole thing. So I can imagine that was terrible. You say you grew up in the Longwood.
This is Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell.